I'm Zaki, and this is basically an intense talk and maybe a dumbed down version of Uma's talk. Um, but that's sort of, I've been trying to figure out, so, I mean, who am I? I've been doing blockchain protocols and cryptography since 2014. I've been interested in consensus protocols, interop, smart contract VMs, application-specific blockchains, MEV, and DeFi. I built an end-user protocol application, a DeFi protocol. Sommelier, it's a digital asset manager. Like one of the things it does right now is it generates the best ETH-denominated yield using Cosmos Tech. The reason I bring this up is I'm somewhat unusual and someone who's built like a bunch of core protocol stuff and end user applications. Um, and so, but I've been doing this for 10 years. And every time I want to use the systems that I've been building for the last 10 years, it takes an hour. And when I started this and I wanted to use Bitcoin, it took an hour. And in many ways, the systems are now much more expressive, but it still really sucks. And when we've in building Sommelier and looking at end user applications, users are constantly frustrated and placed in situations where they don't really understand what's going on, and they are exploited by more sophisticated actors on chain. So the common wisdom is that if we had better account abstraction, better key management, better wallets, we will be liberated from this bad place. And so, in Cosmos, we built account abstraction 2 years ago, some form of account abstraction 2 years ago. Key management still sucks, and there are lots of companies out there that are trying to make it better. And wallets are really hard, and we keep hoping that a better wallet will liberate us from this. But it's not going to fix this problem, which is debugging a failed transaction is terrible. Right? No user can make sense of Etherscan error message of what's going on. When I make routing mistakes and I built all of this, I still get money stuck in the wrong chain, and it takes 20 minutes to unwind the bridging sequence that I strung across 3 bridging protocols to get where I was trying to go. And the control flow problems and the exception handling problems of all of the ways in which we use blockchain are just a nightmare for the most sophisticated people at this. And I don't think this is solvable within the paradigm of what we've been doing for the last 10 years. So this is not the way. What I'm imagining is what we're doing right now is we're specifying execution paths across protocols with heterogeneous infrastructure, and you need the context of an economic actor. You need the context of being a power user, of understanding, of being able to look at different prices on different markets, understanding market depth, understanding there's just a huge amount of domain expertise that is required to actually say, I'm going to turn the wheel to execute a transaction. And what we've been basically doing with the way we've been architecting the end user facing side of blockchains is we've been expecting our user base to be able to be whales or to work in the same ways as whales and market makers do when they functionally don't have enough information and they don't have enough context to do that. So what I've observed, and the reason I've been running around pilling people on the intense discourse, is because the best teams are doing something different. So what I would observe is if you want to see probably the closest glimpse I've seen of all the protocols out there of what I think the future looks like use 1-inch fusion, install a VPN, use 1-inch fusion, it's worth it. So what is 1-inch fusion? Basically, you sign a statement that gives the 1-inch smart contracts the ability to take funds out of custody, out of your custody smart contracts, and then says here are a set of constraints on a trade, and then it just goes out and tries to find something, some solver who will solve it. CalSwap, similar. It's essentially like a primitive intent system. Anoma, we are like all stand on the shoulders of Chris Goes. And like Chris was telling me about intents 3 years ago. I had no idea what he was talking about. Here I am now shilling it. And like MevShare is another really good example of a intent system in production. So like, I think it's relatively clear where the future is going. Like we have these examples of real systems that you can actually use today and play with. And they're like so much better. Like it is so much better to use 1-inch fusion. Like you don't pay gas fees. You don't think about slippage. You don't do any of this nonsense that you deal when you interact with Uniswap directly. And it like totally makes sense for something like Sommelier, like a Sommelier strategist, a market maker to actually deal with 1-inch directly. Like I'm not saying that like no one is going to use blockchains. I'm just saying that like the kinds of users who successfully use blockchains today are probably the kinds of users who are going to successfully use blockchains in the future. And the solution is to build an abstraction that like is not sign a transaction on a chain. So yeah, these are the like common elements of what I think is the future. So users, like we still have to stay in a world of not your keys, not your crypto. If we don't have self-custody, we have nothing. So like C DeFi is obviously a disaster, and like is the thing to like avoid. People need to be able to sign over a set of constraints that describe their goals. And then all of the things that are a nightmare need to be handled by off-chain actors, because trying to embed control flow and exception handling into our smart contracts and into our protocols is probably, if not difficult, if not impossible, it's like super difficult. You're going to end up in a situation where it's like the user wants to do like, I want $100 of Pepe, and then like 10,000 lines of exception handling code. This is not a viable way of working, at least, and like evolving things on chain. So mostly by moving away from like the current notion of transactions, we actually potentially can solve like all of these things that like seem unsolvable within like the current paradigm, which is like, how do you like actually share profits from MEV? How do users actually benefit from the MEV that their order flow generates? Routing is super hard. Like, which DEX should I use? Like, no one can make any sense of this. There are probably new ways of doing transaction privacy in this sort of non-transaction world. I know the Anoma team has thought a lot about it. And like, like IBC is amazing from a security and trust point of view, but it sucks to use. And really what you want is basically to say, like, I want this asset on this chain, or I want this, I want to be staked on this chain, and here's some money. These are the things that you would just want to be able to declaratively say. And we have the like underlying technology to provide like low trust settlement of all of this because of all the bridge and interop work. But what we don't have is like a way of saying these things in a sort of general way. So to conclude, my statement is transactions are not going to make it, and we should give up. We should basically give up trying to build like transaction systems, and we should try and build a new abstraction for end users. Otherwise, we will just repeat the sins of the last wave of mass adoption in the next bull run. So thank you very much.